The world we live in promises equality, but history shows that promise is often broken. In the mid-20th century, one nation, South Africa, codified this broken promise into law. It created a system of absolute racial separation called apartheid, meaning apartness in Afrikaans. Under this cruel system, the majority black population was stripped of all rights, forced to carry passes, and treated as foreigners in their own land. The white minority held absolute power, protected by laws that were rigidly enforced. Fear was the currency of the state, and resistance seemed impossible. But in this divided, unjust land, a powerful leader was being forged, a man who would rise from the rolling hills of the Eastern Cape to challenge an empire and redefine freedom for an entire continent. This is the story of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in a tiny village called Mvezo. His birth name was Rolihlahla, which literally means pulling the branch of a tree, or figuratively, a troublemaker. Though his father was a chief in the Thembu royal house, Mandela grew up with the simple values of the rural Transkei: respect for elders, community, and tradition. He was the first in his family to attend school, where a local teacher gave him the English name, Nelson. The education he received was Western, yet he never forgot his Xhosa identity. At 19, he moved to Johannesburg, leaving the pastoral life behind for the harsh reality of the city. He enrolled at the University College of Fort Hare, the only residential institution for black Africans at the time, and later began studying law, fueled by a sharp intellect and a burning desire for justice. Mandela's legal training was not just a career path, it was preparation for war. He began practicing law with his partner, Oliver Tambo, establishing the first black-run law firm in South Africa. In their cramped offices, they defended black citizens against the oppressive pass laws and police brutality of the apartheid regime. This work put him face to face with the daily indignities and systemic dehumanization of his people. Initially, Mandela believed in nonviolent protest. He joined the African National Congress, ANC, a political organization dedicated to achieving rights for black South Africans. Working within the ANC's Youth League, he quickly realized that polite appeals and petitions were ignored by the ruthless government. The sheer scale of injustice demanded a stronger, bolder response. In the 1950s, Mandela organized the Defiance Campaign, a peaceful mass movement where thousands of black volunteers intentionally broke unjust apartheid laws, such as using whites-only entrances. The goal was to flood the prisons and cripple the system. Mandela led by example, showing extraordinary courage and discipline. This campaign, though non-violent, marked a turning point. It proved that black South Africans would no longer submit quietly, but the state responded with brutal force. Mandela was repeatedly arrested. He realized that the government viewed peaceful protest not as a moral challenge, but as a minor inconvenience to be crushed. The troublemaker was finally embracing his name. The ANC was moving from a body of gentlemen's pleas to a determined revolutionary force. Mandela, the lawyer, was about to become Mandela, the warrior, committing himself to a path that would cost him everything. The transition from peaceful advocate to armed resistor was terrifying, but necessary. Mandela knew that true freedom requires sacrifice, and he was ready to offer his life to dismantle the foundation of injustice that stained his land. The world changed irrevocably for Mandela in 1960, with the Sharpeville massacre. Police opened fire on a crowd of unarmed black protesters, killing 69 people, many shot in the back as they fled. This event shattered the possibility of purely non-violent struggle. The government had shown it would answer peace with murder. Mandela reached a painful but firm conclusion. The government has left us with no choice. He realized that to fight the violence of the state, they had to be prepared to defend themselves and strike back. He secretly co-founded a new militant wing of the ANC called Umkhonto we Sizwe, MK, or Spear of the Nation. The MK's mission was not to target civilians, but to sabotage critical infrastructure, power plants, transport links, and communication systems, to damage the apartheid economy and force the government to the negotiating table. Mandela went underground, becoming a fugitive from the very laws he once sought to reform. He became known as the Black Pimpernel, constantly moving, disguised as a chauffeur, a cook, or a construction worker. traveling across South Africa and abroad to garner support and secure funding for the resistance. During this time, he received military training in Algeria. He understood that legitimacy required both moral strength and the capacity to wage an effective struggle. He lived in constant peril, separated from his wife, Winnie, and their children. His life was now totally dedicated to the struggle. His actions sent a clear message to the apartheid regime. Resistance was organized, determined, and now armed. He was hunted relentlessly, the most wanted man in South Africa. In 1963, a raid on a secluded farm in Rivonia, outside Johannesburg, led to the capture of Mandela and other key MK leaders. They were put on trial for sabotage and conspiracy to violently overthrow the government, crimes punishable by death. The trial became a global stage, exposing the brutality of apartheid to the world. Mandela, acting as the lead defendant, did not deny his actions. Instead, he used his final address, which lasted for 4 hours, to indict the system itself. His speech remains one of the most powerful political statements of the 20th century. In a calm yet defiant tone, he spoke his famous words, "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." Mandela expected to be sentenced to death. On June 12, 1964, the judge delivered his verdict. Not death, but life imprisonment. While this saved his life, it buried him alive. Nelson Mandela was taken to Robben Island, a former leper colony turned maximum security prison. The walls of Robben Island were meant to silence him, to break his spirit, and to make the world forget him. Yet, ironically, his imprisonment did the opposite. It cemented his image as the ultimate martyr for the cause of freedom, turning the obscure Black Pimpernel into a global icon of resistance. His trial marked the end of the first chapter of his life, and the beginning of a 27-year ordeal behind bars. The world looked away, but the flame of hope that Mandela lit during his trial could not be extinguished. His long walk to freedom would now be measured in the endless days of prison. Robben Island was a rock of cruelty. For the first 18 years, Mandela was forced to perform back-breaking labor in a limestone quarry. The sun glare was blinding, and the constant dust permanently damaged his tear ducts. He slept on a thin mat in a cell barely 6 feet wide. His only communication with the outside world was one censored letter and one visit every 6 months. He was deliberately subjected to the worst conditions, given short trousers while others received long ones, denied glasses, and forced into silence. But the state failed to break him. Mandela transformed the prison into an island of learning. He was highly disciplined, rising before dawn to exercise. Crucially, he used his legal mind and his natural authority to educate his fellow prisoners. He taught them history, law, and politics, turning the prisoners into a disciplined political force. The inmates referred to him respectfully as Madiba, his clan name, acknowledging his status as a father figure and leader. Perhaps the most astonishing act of resistance on Robben Island was Mandela's decision to learn the language of his oppressors, Afrikaans. He began studying the culture and history of the warders and the white minority who enforced apartheid. This was not submission, it was strategy. He realized that to defeat an enemy, you must understand them, not just their military strength, but their fears and their culture. This knowledge earned him grudging respect from some of the guards. Slowly, he built bridges of common humanity, winning small concessions for the prisoners, not through violence, but through reason and moral persistence. He demonstrated that dignity was not something the jailers could take away. It was something he held within himself. The isolation was immense, and the personal cost was devastating. Mandela endured decades without touching his family. When his youngest son, Thembekile, was killed in a car accident, the prison authorities denied him permission to attend the funeral. He bore this immense personal pain in silence, realizing that his own suffering was merely a fraction of the suffering endured by his people. As the years passed, the outside world started to take notice. The global anti-apartheid movement, fueled by his story and the struggle led by the ANC, grew stronger. Sanctions were imposed on South Africa. The simple man locked away in Cell 5 began to loom larger than the government that imprisoned him. His name became a rallying cry, "Free Nelson Mandela!" In the late 1980s, the apartheid regime realized it could not survive without the consent of the majority. The world demanded Mandela's release. Sensing the shift, the government transferred him to Pollsmoor Prison, and then to a cottage in Victor Verster Prison, effectively isolating him but moving him closer to secret negotiations. From behind bars, Mandela began to negotiate the terms of his freedom, and more importantly, the end of apartheid. He did this in secret, often without the knowledge of his colleagues, trusting his own moral compass. The government was trying to negotiate the terms of their surrender, but Mandela insisted on negotiating the terms of a new, free nation. His goal was not revenge, but reconciliation. The troublemaker was now the nation's only hope for peace. Mandela proved that the human spirit cannot be caged. For 27 years he maintained his dignity, studied his enemy, and emerged not broken, but sharpened, ready to lead his divided nation out of darkness. After 27 long years, the world held its breath. On February 11, 1990, Nelson Mandela walked out of Victor Verster Prison, holding hands with his wife, Winnie. The images of the tall, elderly man, who had been locked away as a firebrand and returned as a statesman, were broadcast globally. His release symbolized the end of an era and the beginning of South Africa's most challenging transition. His first public speech resonated with the authority and moral clarity forged in the quarry. He was met by throngs of people who had never known a world without apartheid. He urged them to continue the struggle peacefully and made it clear that while he was committed to a political solution, the ANC's military wing, MK, would remain active until democracy was assured. The negotiations for a truly democratic, non-racial South Africa began almost immediately, led by Mandela and the sitting president, F.W. de Klerk. The path to democracy was treacherous. Violence erupted between ANC supporters and Zulu factions, encouraged by elements within the government trying to derail the process. The nation was constantly on the brink of civil war. Mandela had to move with caution and unwavering moral principle. In one of his most crucial moments, following the assassination of ANC leader Chris Hani in 1993, the country was plunged into crisis. Most expected total chaos, but Mandela stepped in, speaking directly to the nation. "I appeal to all South Africans to stand firm against those who would destroy what Chris Hani gave his life for, the freedom of all of us." His intervention, calm and commanding, is widely credited with preventing a race war. He proved he was not just a symbol, but the only leader capable of holding the country together. In 1994, South Africa held its first-ever democratic, non-racial election. Millions of people who had never before been allowed to vote waited in massive lines, exercising a right for which Mandela and countless others had sacrificed their lives. The ANC won overwhelmingly, and Nelson Mandela, at the age of 75, was inaugurated as the first president of the Free Republic of South Africa. His presidency was marked by an astonishing commitment to reconciliation. He led by example, including white officials in his government, reaching out to his former jailers, and, most famously, supporting the predominantly white national rugby team, the Springboks, during the 1995 World Cup. He knew that if he sought revenge, the country would burn. Instead, he offered forgiveness, urging all South Africans to embrace the idea of a rainbow nation. Mandela stepped down after just one term, setting a powerful precedent for democracy in Africa. He dedicated the remainder of his life to human rights, education, and fighting the AIDS epidemic. He was a statesman who never lost his common touch, able to speak to kings and schoolchildren with the same genuine respect. Nelson Mandela died on December 5, 2013, at the age of 95. He had fulfilled his ideal. He lived to see a democratic and free society achieved. His story is a testament to the power of perseverance and the ultimate triumph of human dignity over systemic oppression. Like Lincoln, he saved his nation from division, not with bullets, but with moral force, proving that the most powerful weapon in the world is not violence, but the unshakable belief in the principle that all people deserve to be free. His legacy is not just the end of apartheid, but the enduring lesson that true leadership requires the courage to negotiate with your enemies and the wisdom to forgive them.